If we found single cellular life in the valleys on Mars, for instance, that seem to come from a very different phylogenetic tree than ours, then we can make assumptions about, well, maybe it's elsewhere in the cosmos as well.
But if we find life on Mars, I would be surprised if it doesn't have the same source. To me, abiogenesis, to get to the first cell, seems to be very unlikely. I suspect that you need to roll the cosmic dice super often, maybe as often as there are planetary surfaces.
So that would mean that even single cellular or basic life is very rare in the universe. To be like panspermia, there was something happened somewhere else and the basic building blocks were transported to Earth. And Earth
I suspect that basically the probability that if you put a few cells on some meteor and throw it into space and it hits somewhere is probably higher, that this thing survives somehow and takes root on that planet than life spontaneously emerging. Maybe there are theories that explain this, and I'm not completely aware of this, but basically when I look at the complexity of the cell and the fact that individual parts of the cell have difficulty to work with each other in a stable way, and it's difficult to imagine this spontaneous formation of these things outside of a membrane and so on. That makes it quite unlikely that complex organic chemistry is able to spontaneously form all these dynamics.
Well, we had cells we got the mitochondria that was swallowed by another cell, and then they sort of learned to become partners and to coexist.
But they were both cells already to start with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So all this functionality seems to come from a certain subset of functionality that you need to bootstrap all this. And all this is very complex molecular machinery. So I really cannot blame the intelligent design proponents that they think that the first cell is highly unlikely. But I would think that if we are in base reality, then we need to account for the intelligent design by a non-biological intelligence. Mm-hmm. And so interesting questions. Could there be non-biological intelligences? Or could there be a gas giant, for instance, that spontaneously forms self-organizing structure? And maybe it is. Yeah, so imagine you have a thing where you have, atmospheric storms, and these atmospheric storms create magnetic fields because the clouds have metal particles in them. And this means that some clouds are going to move differently from other clouds depending on how they react to these magnetic storms. And then at some point you have a self-organizing system. And if you let this fester for a few million years, maybe it self-organizes more and more feedback loops until it becomes sentient. And then it realizes, oh my God, I am alone. It's not going to suffer from this because it's not evolved to feel bored if it's alone. But maybe it finds it interesting to populate other planets with intelligence. And then it constructs the first cell as a von Neumann probe. Right, this is pretty out there.
every direction as possible.
So maybe this is how it happened. Maybe we should ask Jupiter what we are doing here.